They can use it to prepare themselves if they're having to teach something. I also think that, because it's taken 6 months often to make one of these videos, we've really dialed down communicating a lot in a small amount of time. So often I tell pastors, like, listen, our videos are free. You can play them at church on Sunday. Like, you can play them in your small group. You don't have to spend an hour trying to communicate what we've done in 5 minutes. If it was me, I would play the video, and then I would get to spend the next 45 minutes unpacking what that means in the here and now.
Welcome to Great Bible Teacher Interviews. Hello, I'm Rick Jordan, President of Great Bible Teachers. Each week I have the opportunity to interview a scholar, an author, or a practitioner, and we talk about the Bible, biblical interpretation, or spiritual formation. Today I'm pleased to interview Mike McDonald, who is a strategic organizer for the Bible Project out of Oregon. Mike has been a pastor. He has also been a community activist and a very active mission leader, leading hundreds of mission trips all over the world. In his job now, he works with the Bible Project, and this is an excellent resource I have found to help us get a good grasp of an entire book of the Bible in just a few minutes. I'd like to welcome Mike McDonald from the Bible Project with us today. And Mike, thank you so much for giving us some time today to talk to us about the Bible Project.
Rick, it's my pleasure. Thanks so much for having me. This is a joy.
Thank you. Well, one of the questions I always ask the people I interview is about great Bible teachers. That's our ministry name. And I always ask, who has been a great Bible teacher in your life and what makes them that way, that you would describe them that way?
Oh, man. There's two that come to mind. So I don't know if I'm allowed to, but I'm going to say two because they have a very different kind of approach. And they're both people that I've gotten to spend time. I would say they're very relational, meaning it's not just a book that I've read. There's somebody I've interacted with or I've sat with, or they're a dear friend. That's been important to me to see them live out what it is that they also talk about. The first is the late John Sailhammer, who is just an incredible Bible teacher. He profoundly shaped and changed the way that I understood and thought about the Pentateuch and the Old Testament and the Torah. Brilliant thinker, humble man, and so that was my first insight into like a Bible theologian that came across very relationally as opposed to just teachy. And that was a huge part for me. The second is a dear friend of mine, Bob Goff, who I feel lives out what he understands. So I would say he's a great Bible doer, which has been a teacher to me in that he lives out the things that he's reading every single day, and he's practicing the things that he's maybe being convicted about. And that has been a very great teacher for me. So I would say those are two that come to mind. And Tim from the Bible Project. I mean, I think I'd be remiss to say, he's taught me to think very differently. He's taught me to think in understanding story and understanding the larger meta narrative, to not bifurcate all these texts, but to really understand it as a large story. He's helped shape my narrative approach to the Bible more than anybody, for sure.
Great. You're with the Bible Project now, and
I am.
And then tell us a little bit about maybe how you came to be with the Bible Project, and then give us some definition of what is the Bible Project.
Sure. Yeah. So I was pastor for 14 years, 2 different churches here in town, Imago Dei Communities, where I started off, which is a great church kind of in the inner city of Portland, and then moved out to one, Bridgetown in downtown Portland, and others. So kind of operated in that ministry side of things for the last 14 years. I was using a lot of the Bible Project stuff. That Tim and John were friends of mine from time in Portland, known them for over a decade, and was using a lot of the materials, the English materials, when I would travel overseas to work with indigenous pastors in a number of different countries, in the Middle East and in Africa and in Asia. And they were so helpful from a just simple understanding of the overarching narrative in the scriptures to help them teach the Bible, that I just have always been a big fan, not only friends, but very much using it. And so when the Bible Project started to really look at the global landscape of getting all of our videos localized in 60 languages and helping serve indigenous local pastors in those communities and people in those communities, that's where I jumped on board to say, like, I'm all in. I'd love to help with that kind of effort. And so that was my path from kind of the pastoral route into working at the Bible Project. And to answer your second question, yeah, the Bible Project, we're just a animation studio in Portland, Oregon, that make explainer videos about the Bible. And our mission is, and our belief is that the Bible is a unified story that leads to Jesus. And so we want to help people experience the Bible as a unified story that leads to Jesus. And we do that through making these short explainer videos on books of the Bible, themes of the Bible, topics, word studies. We've got a number of series that we do that in as well, but really just helping people actually read the Bible. And that's our aim. That's our mission.
I really love the Bible Project, I got to tell you. And one of the things I love about the Bible Project is just what you've described, that it can be so overwhelming. I mean, how many people start off saying, I've always wanted to read the Bible. I'm just going to start with Genesis 1, I'm going to read all the way through it. And, they get bogged down somewhere.
By about Leviticus,
yeah, that's right.
Something happens. And
yeah, I mean, even it could even be Exodus. Like, what do you do when somebody kills your sheep or something? It's like, chapter after chapter of all these things. And so they don't see the meta story of the Bible. They don't get it. And these little videos, and we'll do some links to some of the videos. But for example, the first one on Genesis, on the first chapters of Genesis. I mean, there is a lot in Genesis that is explained in 7 or 8 minutes. And then you could go back and read it, and it kind of fills in for you.
Yeah. I think that's what's unique is our videos aren't meant to take away from reading the Bible. They actually, at least for me, and I can only speak personally, when I watch one of the videos, it actually makes me want to go back and read the text. And so I'm actually encouraged to go and read versus like, oh, now I understand Genesis, I can move on. It's actually more like, oh my gosh, is that what it's saying? I need to go back. I want to go back and actually see that play out. And so, and you'll notice with us in Genesis is probably the book that we go to the most, because if you can't understand Jesus, or you can't understand the new heavens and the new earth if you don't understand Genesis, if you don't understand the beginning, if you don't understand, all of that. And so we constantly are going back to the root to go, we can understand the city because we understand the garden. We can understand Jesus because we can understand the original humanity in Adam. So all of that's really important for us.
You all have different series of videos. So some of them are Bible. What are the other series that you all have?
Yeah, we have a big one called How to Read the Bible. That's 19 videos. And that's really, I think, one of the most amazing series for me personally that's helped me. How do I even approach the Bible? It's a weird book. It's a hard book. It's multiple books, multiple authors, different types of writing. You've got storytelling, you've got facts, you've got, you've just got everything in there. And if you don't understand poetry, and we wouldn't tell somebody to read a book of poetry the same way that they're going to read a Stephen King novel to bring up, your upcoming blog, or to read the gospel account of Jesus the same way that you would read Leviticus in a book of law. So helping people actually go, how do I approach each of these books? What was the original intent and the original group of people that this was being written to, and can I get into that framework to then approach the book? And so that series is incredible for helping people actually, how do I read the Bible? Because that's a big topic. We've also got them on spiritual beings, which is just that was supposed to be one theme video that just when you start unpacking it, it became 7 videos. And that can sound really funky to a lot of people, at least here in the West. But you can't read the Bible and not talk about spiritual entities and spiritual beings. They're just in there. So whatever we think about them now, we got to look at them of what they were, what they were representing and everything else in the Bible. We've got a wisdom series, which is, Ecclesiastes and Job, and really great videos. Those are some of our most watched videos. Word studies, which are shorter, kind of specific words that you see in the Bible that really help define what those words meant in that context, so that we can actually, because words get weird with us. We hear them, and like the word sin, we have a certain baggage to that word based off of our current context and maybe how it's been preached or taught. To actually go back into the Hebrew and go, what did that word mean? What was it about? How would they have heard that word, and help that define how we're actually taking it in? And then big theme videos that are like massive overarching themes in the Bible. So those would be like Messiah and God and Holy Spirit and the kingdom of God, and all those kind of big generosity, compassion. We just did one. So yeah.
And those videos, can you tell us a little bit, like how's it begin? Like,
Sure. What's the process?
Yeah, y'all sitting around a table and say,
Yeah.
"Hey, nobody's talked about Satan yet. Let's do that one." Or
Sure. Yeah, I mean, there's a little bit of that for sure, in the sense that, you've got a teacher. Tim is kind of our resident theologian, who has a team of people around him as well, but he would kind of be that. John is kind of our resident question asker, strategic thing. He's brilliant in the way that he asks questions. He creates a really safe place that would be like you and me being able to ask questions. So he kind of represents that person. And we've got 5 years of content mapped out. So like, we've got the idea of what we're doing for the next 5 years. We put out a video usually every 3 weeks. And so that's, what do we see being important to talk about, right now? And that could be the justice video or the compassion video. And some of them were just play straight up, we're going to go through the whole Bible. So it was pretty easy, those first 73 videos. And it was just like, we're going to go from one to the next, to the next, to the next. And so they start with often John and Tim sitting down and having a conversation just like this, where Tim is about to teach John something. So let's pick compassion, which is our most recent video that just came out. Tim's going to do a bunch of research on the word compassion, the Hebrew, the Greek, all of those things, all the different places that it's found, the overarching meta narrative found from God's character and Exodus and so on, all the way to, Jesus. Everything comes back to Jesus. And so he's going to do all that study, and then John and him are going to sit down, and it's what our podcast is, but it's basically the two of them just having a conversation where Tim's trying to teach John something, and John keeps asking questions like, wait a minute, you're telling me that compassion comes from a root word around like a mother's womb? Like, hold on, that sounds really weird. Let's talk about that. And they get to just talk. And that might last an hour, that might last 6 hours, just depending on when John kind of gets to that point where he's like, I think I got it. They take those podcasts and boil that down into a script. The script then gets given to a storyboard artist. We have a whole team of artists and animators and illustrators here in Portland. The storyboard artist is going to take it and kind of work out, how is this going to be communicated visually? What's the style? What's the whole part? That then gets given to some illustrators to illustrate out the whole thing. Then it gets given to animators that are going to make everything move, to make all those drawings actually move. And then it goes into sound design. I mean, there's a lot of, it's a studio. It's a full-on like Pixar type studio that are making these videos. And those videos take anywhere from 3 months to 9 months to make one like 5-minute video. And so if we're putting one out every 3 weeks, that means we have a lot of teams that are working on different projects at any given time. There's usually 4 or 5 video projects happening on different teams so that we can launch those videos. And then once that video goes live, then it kicks off a whole other process where we start doing that in 60 different languages around the world. And we fully localize and contextualize those videos. So we have animation teams in all those countries that are local indigenous workers that are actually, and then we translators and language advisors, and then we reanimate everything. And then at some point we launch those out into the world as well. So that's the process. That's how the sausage is made. So
Wow. It's just amazing. And it's amazing how many people are involved in this.
yeah,
You're in Portland, Oregon.
we are
Uh, and how many people are on the
part of the team.
payroll, if you will? Yeah.
I mean, I think today it's probably somewhere around 40, I'm guessing. And half of that is a studio. So that's like the animation studio that's really doing the work around illustration, animation, storytelling, everything else. We have a team that works on something called Classroom, which is basically free seminary level classes that we put out. Classroom.bible, I think is the address for it right now. But you can find that on our website. But that's Tim teaching students. So there's a whole other team, which is like our education wing, which is we're creating free resources to help educate around the Bible. And then there's a localization team, which is also a team that I help lead as well, which is all of those other languages getting translated and worked on. So that's a whole team of people. We have our audience engagement team, which are the people that interact with our audience. So that's our Instagram and Facebook and YouTube and all the ways that we actually get stuff out. But then also the patrons that help make this possible. All these videos are free to watch. I often don't say they're free because they do cost something, but they're paid for by incredible patrons from around the world that just give to the project on a monthly basis to basically keep getting these videos made so that we can give them away for free in all those contexts. And so that's a team, our finance team. So yeah, there's support, there's people, but all of this is just meant to get, these videos out into the world and allow people to do that.
Well, it's just amazing. And it's awesome that, someone like me can just stumble across it basically, and it doesn't cost anything, and yet it's so enriching. So I really appreciate that, and I appreciate your patrons.
Me
for
too.
doing that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so true. It is true. It's often usually free means not good quality. And so I think that's the hard thing. Like when things cost something, there's a value that's associated with it. And so, one of the things for us is that I think we have a very high value of excellence when it comes to making them. But to be able to give them away for free is just an incredible, asset to be able to give that away, and have organizations and individuals and all the people that you talk with, like these lay leaders that are having to teach the Bible. I mean, gosh, I was one of those people too, like leading a small group, having to show up each week and teach through a Bible passage. And I didn't go to Bible seminary. I was just a young, leader in the church, and I didn't have things like this, and gosh, to be able to sit down and watch an 8-minute video to at least get a good contextual understanding of what I'm about to teach, and then dive in and figure out like how I'm going to make that, for today relevant for my group of people. But a lot of the work would have been done at least from that, like, oh, give me the context. Like that's sometimes that takes hours, days, weeks to just digest all of that.
Mm-hmm.
And Tim and the team have done that for us. And so it really helps me as a Bible teacher, and I know a lot of others, just to at least give you a framework to start from.
Do you find you always, everybody has some kind of theological slant? I mean, like for example, when you're quoting scriptures, it's not King James Version. It's I don't know if it's Tim's translation or New Revised Standard Version or something.
Yeah.
What do you do with that? Like when you're approaching something, there must be discussions about, okay, are we going to say this is a literal thing or is this a figurative story?
Sure. Yeah, there is. Now, part of that is it's very much a narrative framework. So, I mean, that's a certain theology that I think, that's going to help, that's going to lead and bend us in a certain way. Two, Tim is fluent in Hebrew. And so he actually, he was a Hebrew scholar, taught Hebrew here in the States, lived in Israel. When he reads his Bible, it's a Hebrew Bible. It's not, so when he's often quoting scripture, it's, or if it's Greek or what have you, he's often just quoting from that language and kind of translating it in his own way. And then because there's, like any translation, there's going to be bends here and there. If we're an ESV, then that probably means you're Reformed. If you're this, it probably means this. And so we're careful not to actually latch on to any of those, not actually say that any of those are wrong, but just to say, like, there's certain times where I'm like, that's a really good translation of that text. And other times it's going to be the NIV. And other times it is going to be the, so what's Tim's constantly juggling is what was the original intent for this scripture in that time, in that moment? And let's use that. I think that's why we've been able to stay. We've got Baptists and Protestants and Catholics, and we've got a wide variety of people that watch our videos and go, that's great. That's what it says. And part of that is that we aren't attaching ourselves to any of those necessarily, theologies. We're really kind of just saying, this is what the Bible said at the time in that moment. You go figure out what that means for you in 2020. That's up for the church to decide and talk about and discuss and live out as a community. We're not prescribing that in that sense. We're really just going, if you want to learn about the Bible, then here you go. If you want to learn about praxis and what that means for today, that's for you in a community to actually do. And hopefully we get to serve those communities in helping with the Bible piece. But that's for, guys like you, Rick, and others to kind of go, all right, what does this mean for my family? What does this mean for my church?
Right. It's remarkable to me too that you're doing all of these languages and cultures, because that's a real challenge too. Sometimes and
yeah,
your expertise is there from being a world traveler and someone who has worked with leaders around the world. What kind of challenges do you meet and overcome when it comes to a different culture, and the way we would say it here is not the way they would say it there?
Yeah, you've got to hold things pretty loosely in the sense that what are we trying to describe with the video? So we have to understand what Tim and John and the team's idea was for the video. And then we have to be willing to adapt some of those languages, some of those words, some of those stories that we've even chosen to use as examples into the context from the language that we're working on. And so the scripts are not just word for word translated. They are very, we'll try to stay to the original text as much as possible, but only if it doesn't pull away from a real, point or thought. And so where we might say something about email or, going to Starbucks in a story, we're not going to use those, for our folks in Laos or wherever else that we're working in. And so that's why we have to hire, and we really want to work with local indigenous leaders on the ground. We work with a local language advisor that's helping advise that and go, yeah, this isn't going to work. We need to change that. Here's what I would suggest. We run those by, our team to make sure that it's, yes, that's actually what we were meaning to say, and that will work in that context. Drawing, contextualizing. So we really don't call it just translation work. We call it localization work, because we're trying to localize those videos that if somebody from Iraq watched our Arabic translation, they would go, that was made by somebody from Iraq. That's our hope, that it's not an American thing that's just been translated, but that it's actually breathed out from this local experience. And so it's a lot of work. It's a lot of moving parts. It's a lot of people. It's a lot of discussion. There's tons that can go wrong. You pick the wrong voice person, that's from a certain region. It's like, well, that person's from the South and they don't agree with the people from the North. And so people from the North aren't even going to watch this video. Like, you're constantly working through how that's going to play out in each of these contexts. And you have to just make the best choice that you can with what you're given. So.
Yeah. That's what we're all about anyway. It's kind of contextual to the culture that we're in, and even in the States, if you're working with one kind of crowd, you have to translate the scripture in that way,
right,
and make it relevant to what they are able to understand.
That's right. Yeah.
So why does the Bible need a project?
Well, I'll tell you what, I've never met anybody where I'm like, hey, would you like help understanding the Bible? I've never met anybody that's just like, no, I think I'm good. I got it. Like, I think I understand it. I've never met anybody. It doesn't matter whether they've been studying it for 60 years or they're, a doctorate in this. If you have an honest conversation about, like, would it be helpful to have something that would help you understand this book? I've never had anybody that shook their head and said no. So I think there's something there that like many of us have a desire to understand the Bible. We just don't have the framework or the roadmap. And I'm not saying we have all the answers at all. We're just a little part in helping people do that. I also think there's just something about visually learning things that we're realizing we're much more visual learners than I think we often, probably give credit to. And so there's something about learning it visually and allowing us to take in that content. And then I also think that the Bible is scary, and there's enough shame in our Christian kind of culture around knowing this stuff, or you should know it, or you should understand it, that somewhere along the line, we weren't allowed to ask questions. Like, I just feel like I've shown up at church, for a lot of my life. And if somebody said, hey, angels don't have wings, I don't feel like I've got the freedom to go, wait a minute, how come there's wings in every like, tell me about this. Like, I don't feel like I'm allowed to ask that question. I feel like John and Tim have helped broke that mold where they both went to Bible college. They both went to seminary. John went to Bible college and Tim kept going. But John is creating a safe place to ask questions. And he's willing to ask the questions that we all have, but we're just afraid to ask because it might make us look stupid in our communities that we are so worried about, looking a certain way. And so I think the Bible needs a project for a number of reasons. One, we all want help reading it. Two, we need to create a framework that we're allowed to ask questions and not have all the answers. And that it's a lifelong process of study, and that our opinions are going to change. Our theology is going to change. Rick, me and you are both going to meet Jesus one day and realize we had some bad theology. We all are, every single one of us. And so are we okay giving that up a little bit so that we just continue to grow and learn and dive in and study? And I think that's why the Bible needs a project, because it's not a one and done. It's not a Stephen King novel, or it's not a Clancy novel where I read it once and I'm like, good, I got it. I understand the story. It's like this lifelong journey. And so I think that's why it needs a project.
Yeah, very good. So when will you be done? When will the project
I mean, here's the wild thing. We'll be done when people, our patrons and our audience, don't want it anymore, or don't think we've held this very loosely that if for some reason tomorrow everybody stopped giving, we would do something else. We're doing this to help serve. So if people stop watching or they stop giving, then that's a very clear indication that it's not a need anymore for people. And if it's not a need, then we don't want to be making them. We're not making them just for ourselves. We're making them to serve the larger kingdom. And so I think that's when we'll be done. I feel like there's an endless amount. Feels like every year we add another year of content. So I think 2 years ago, I said we had 5 years of content figured out. And then we did those 2 years, but I think we added 2 more years on to the end. So I think we could go forever, in the sense that the Bible is a long project that we could just keep going. Doesn't mean we will. Maybe we'll stop at some point if people, again, it's more just about what the patrons and the audience are asking for, and we try to serve that.
That's awesome. What should I ask that I haven't asked yet?
Oh man, Rick, I think you've been great. Well, I mean, maybe just like ways that your audience. I mean, here's some ways that people use it. They're using it. They can use it to prepare themselves if they're having to teach something. I also think that, because it's taken 6 months often to make one of these videos, we've really dialed down communicating a lot in a small amount of time. So often I tell pastors, like, listen, our videos are free. You can play them at church on Sunday. Like, you can play them in your small group. You don't have to spend an hour trying to communicate what we've done in 5 minutes. If it was me, I would play the video, and then I would get to spend the next 45 minutes unpacking what that means in the here and now, of how to be a better husband, or how to be a better or how to be a better dad, or like, that's the stuff that I think we should be talking about. But we often, as pastors, have to spend so much time unpacking the scripture that we're left with like our 3 nuggets at the end that are like, all right, and here's your 3 bullet points of like, how to do this today. So use the stuff. It's there for you to use. So either preparing, either just sharing it, whether it's, we found that they help people create discussions. So if it's a small group, I've done this a lot where we play a video and then it's like an hour and a half, 2 hours of this discussion around it. You don't have to plan anything. And that's, to me, where discipleship happens. That's where thought happens. That's where my beliefs get rubbed up against yours, and we're stretching and growing. It's like iron sharpening iron, and that's the good stuff. So to me, using it in that way, where you play a video and then just, man, what do you think? What do you disagree with? What did you agree with? What did that make you think about? What scriptures came out when you heard that? All those things are really good for small groups and discipleship. There's reading plans on YouVersion. If you use the app, the YouVersion app, all of our videos are in that. So you can read along as your reading plan and actually watch the videos. I really recommend that. Yeah, that's
great.
Use it however, it's basically what's mine is yours. Like, just use it however is going to make the most amount of sense for you guys.
Right now, how many videos are you all up to now?
We have, oh gosh, I think it's just over 150, maybe 160. So there's 73 overview videos, and that's the books of the Bible. And then there's another probably close to 80 that are like the theme videos, word studies, series, all of that. So yeah, it's about 150-ish. And then we add one every usually 3 weeks.
Yeah. So actually, like you say, as a reading plan, if you just watched a video every other day to get through a year's worth, you'd have quite a good education.
Yeah, if you just watch these videos, it would give you, it's a free seminary done in a way that anybody could actually understand and grasp. And I think it's, you could watch one every other day, and within a year, you'd be really set.
Yeah. I'd like to thank Mike McDonald from the Bible Project for sharing with us about this very neat ministry. I personally have found it helpful, and found it helpful as I'm leading my Bible studies as well. I encourage you to go to their website at thebibleproject.com to find out more about their videos and how you can use them. I also encourage you to go to greatbibleteachers.com, where you can sign up for our enews. It comes out on Tuesdays to let you know about a blog that I have written about Bible studies. And then on Thursdays, it comes out with this type of interview, normally with a scholar or author or practitioner. So I encourage you to sign up for that, and you'll be well informed about newest trends in Bible study and research. Thank you for joining us today.